we're kind of floored that it's going to get started soon. So I'm gonna go through some basic stuff with y'all. Oh, sense. Thank you, Evan, for clearing that up for us. That's the joke, everyone, if you're looking in the chat. So go ahead, and that really is funny. So we're going to go ahead and get started on the website review. And so let's do a quick recap. And I'm trying to pull it up here, but it is being a little annoying. Okay. So here we go. So if you go to our website, oh my goodness, I lost it. Here we go. If you go here to access the application page, I'm sure all of you are familiar with this. You can go ahead and download the packet for the NOFA that we're going to be talking about today here. If you haven't already, please let us know after at HOME-ARP@dca.ga.gov, because you're going to have a bit of catching up to do over the weekend. So here's where you download the packet, tips to the application process, responses to the questions. This has been updated. And the one from today, I just have to add that one. That's the latest one. And then here are all the recordings. Note, we talked about the eligible cost handout from HUD, which had come up before. I will. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. HOME-ARP NCS eligible cost handout. So go ahead and download this, please. So then that way you can have that when you're filling out the information, okay? I have a question. Can I still listen on this even though we are withdrawing from putting our application forward this year, or should I just wait? You're more than welcome to listen to this. It's going to be on the website. You may have questions that you may want answered now. So that would be the only reason that I would recommend staying on. So then that way you can ask questions while we're here for you. And so this really is the only time where you can ask questions. And so, yeah, so that's that. So I do think that being on is not a bad thing. Let me just put it that way. Okay, moving on to our next thing. Could 3 years of, this is the latest question, could 3 years of 990 financial tax forms be prepared by a CPA meet the financial requirements? Yes, that's fine, especially if you're below the minimum for the state. Those 990s are great. So because they really do encapsulate everything, because essentially what you're reporting to the IRS should be everything. So yes, that's perfect. The other thing too that I want full disclosure about, we did have 2 meetings. One with Advantage Behavioral Health regarding their environmentals and what that's looking like with the land and the requirements for HUD before they break ground on some stuff. And then another with Wellspring Living and regarding the 12 to 17-year-olds. So essentially, for those of you, if you happen to be housing 12 to 17-year-olds, you can serve that age group with the non-congregate shelter money, but you cannot require them to participate in programming. We're still looking at school programming, but in general, like if you have any specific programming, then that would be something that you can't require them to attend, and that's a HUD thing. HUD is very specific about voluntary programming and not requiring individuals to attend that programming. Okay. Am I missing anything? Okay, there we go. Next. So we're going to jump right in, everyone. And so if you have a question, we will totally take you off take you off mute to ask it. That's fine. Just raise your hand so I know that there's a question before you take yourself off mute. Okay. Or you can go ahead and put it in the chat and then I'll read it out to everyone, and then that way it'll get on the recording. Okay, so that's kind of the rules of today. And again, we're stopping at 1:55, so I'll probably do a final roll call at 1:50 beforehand. Okay, so what we're looking at today is the packaging of everything, and that includes the scoring sheets. So we're going to go over all of this. It can be a lot of information, but essentially I'm going to give you some tips to take throughout. Okay. The first is DCA priorities. And so we are focusing, for obvious reasons, on the DCA priorities when looking at these applications. Okay, so they are meeting DCA's strategic priority to strengthen rural Georgia through local partnerships. Okay, meet DCA's strategic priority to leverage public and private partnerships to deliver affordable housing. Enhance DCA's effectiveness through improved technology process efficiency, excuse me, and to strengthen the overall balance sheet through strong self-sustaining programs and efficient compliance and monitoring. So essentially, that is the framework that we're going to be looking through the applications with. Okay. So again, looking at those, groups that may be in participating jurisdictions, which we talked about a while ago, and that's going to be like Savannah is an example, Atlanta, DeKalb, I think Cobb is one as well, Gwinnett, Columbus, Athens, Macon. We can, all of those groups, and actually I can pull up another example here. Oops, sorry. This is what I wanted to do was share with y'all. So if you're in a participating jurisdiction, and with those jurisdictions, just real quick. So if you're in a participating jurisdiction, I'm going to move this on over. That is fine, but your participating jurisdiction already received money. So it's Albany, Athens, Atlanta, Augusta, Clayton County, Cobb, Columbus, DeKalb, Fulton, Gwinnett, Macon, and Savannah. Okay, so if you're from any of those areas and you're wanting to apply because of our rural Georgia focus, okay, you need to show how you're serving individuals outside of your participating jurisdiction. Okay, so again, that data piece is really important, showing us who you're serving and why it's important, even though you may be located in that participating jurisdiction, that you're still serving individuals who are outside of it. Okay, and so that's the whole strengthening rural Georgia through local partnerships. Also, if you are in a rural area of Georgia, that's great. Just go ahead and back up your information. Again, the data from your agency is great, as well as the data that you're going to find in the census and other places that we showed y'all before. Is just important to show the need. Okay, so again, we're really trying to do data-driven and community-driven solutions and processes for this. So just go ahead and take a look at those pieces and make sure you include those in this section. Okay. Public and private partnerships. So if there's, again, leveraging is really important. So other people and groups you're working with, including other nonprofits who are contributing maybe time, services, those pieces to your development. That's really going to be a focus of the next submission. But in your operations budget, if there's any additional agencies helping with the development piece, those are all important to reflect in your application. Okay. Technology and processes and efficiency. That's probably going to be more for the second submission. So because we're going to be looking at what you're doing in your agency, and then strong self-sustaining programs and efficient compliance and monitoring. That's going to be mainly for the second submission as well. Okay. However, if you are building more than 11 units, you're going to have to do Davis-Bacon. So that definitely is going to be efficient compliance and monitoring. So please be aware of that. Okay. The other thing is the blue cells, and I'm going to show you what that means. So the blue cells are indicating our threshold criteria. So we're going to talk about that in just a second. Okay. So what we're going to look at is the overall scoring sheet, and that's located in the NOFA overview documents in the download. Okay. And the irony of all of it is I downloaded all the other ones except that one, of course. So the overview document. So let's pull up the scoring sheet real quick. And this is really what we're going to use to see the overall, everything that overall what you're doing. Okay, so this will be overwhelming when you first look at it. So please just give me a minute to kind of walk through it with you. Here's the blue section. So the forms completed for each section, we're going to look at that as far as submission and no submission, and we're going to score that. And all appropriate documents completed for each section. Okay, so we're going to look at that as submission, no submission. And so if you, for whatever reason, you don't have the documents that we need, at the very least, submit a Word document that's PDF'd that states why. Okay, so if you're not submitting something, and it could be for a whole host of reasons, you're just going to need to tell us why. So at least we know that there is a submission for that documentation. Okay. So I'm going to go through all of this. Let me pull this over for love Pete. Okay. Here we go. So, overall scoring sheet. Which this one is, sorry guys, I am having brain fart about all of this stuff. Let me pull up. There we go. Okay, we'll just go to the next thing. So making sure, basically, we're going to look at each of these areas. So the service area, the reason why this is all says NA is because that's the description of the section. My apologies, I missed this. Yes. Yes, the scoring sheet. So going back, it's in the NOFA overview documents, and it's the overall scoring sheet. It's in the 0 section. Okay. Evan, are you good? Okay, great. And so, but essentially what you have in the individual scoring sheets is all the same information. I'm just kind of giving you the bulk, and we're going to go over each section. Okay, so we're going to look at these. So the areas which are white are the ones that we need to fill. The NAs mean you just don't have to worry about those. So this is essentially what we're going to be looking at. Okay, I'm just letting y'all know what we're going to be looking at. Okay. And I'm probably making this more complicated for you than it needs to be. So let's go to our data and SWOT section, which is essentially what Evan was mentioning before. Okay. There we go. So let's take a look at this. So the scoring sheets are the last tab in every worksheet of each section. Okay, so for the data and SWOT, there's this self-score section that's to be completed by the organization. And so here's the first section about looking at the threshold for forms completed for each section, just 1 point max for each of these. Okay. Looking at evidence of experience with shelter operations. Now, again, remember, these are either not included or points scored between 1 and 2 unless otherwise stated. Now, the 1 and 2 means 1 is adequate, 2 is excellent. Okay, so as far as your scoring goes, you're just going to need to let us know if you feel it's excellent or if you feel it's adequate. That is, it's fine either way, however you want to put it. And we're going to try and our objective is to look at everyone okay? And if everyone's doing pretty much the same thing, that's all going to be adequate. And if someone is going above and beyond as far as what they're submitting, that's going to be excellent. Okay, so let's put it into numerical terms. Prior organization experience with operating shelters for qualified populations. Okay, so for 5 or more years of shelter operations, they're going to get 5 bonus points. Okay, so for the most part, everyone is going to get adequate, probably 1 point in that section, just because between 0 and 4 is going to be adequate shelter operations, and then those who have 5 or more are going to get excellent. Okay, so essentially what we're going to do is we're going to go over this together when we're reviewing it, and we're going to determine what our 1s and 2s mean. Okay, so there we go. Is the organization, so for the most part, it's mainly going to be 1s, just letting y'all know. Is the organization in accordance with current homeless management information system standards? That should be a very basic. Currently utilizing a housing first approach, yes or no? Or is new to the coordinated entry system with a SMART plan. So essentially what you're going to want to do is go through each of these point pieces. And if it's not reflected in your application, you're going to want to make sure that you reflect it in your application. Okay. So let's move on. Bonus points for experience with federal grants and commitment to DCA, location factors, and then leveraging. And so specifically for 1s and 2s, like here's a great example of location factors. Projects located within the balance of state are going to get a 2, and then participating jurisdictions are going to get a 1. Just like what I said before, those PJs, which is great if you're applying, we encourage that. However, you need to know that your area is already receiving HOME-ARP funding, and the balance of state is not. And so we want to make sure that we are using the money wisely and able to access all areas of Georgia. So just know that going in, okay? Let's see. The external commitment to non-federal funds by city, county, government, or nonprofit, etc., toward a shelter operations. 1 point for 10 to 25% and 2 points for greater than 25%. And that's so that's when you're putting together your budgets, the commitment and leveraging that you're getting from other areas, okay, from other organizations. So what's going to happen after that is we are going to go ahead and then do a DCA score. So then that way we can compare how you see yourself to what we're seeing, okay? So just know that when we're looking at this, and this is a very common way that we utilize, how should I put this? This is a common way when we are scoring, and this is not just in our department, but in the housing finance department and other areas. We look at it with what we're able to give enough reasoning why. Okay, so we want to be able, if you come back to us, which you're more than welcome to, and say, why did you score it this way? We will give you a very real reason why that we can defend, because we have to. With other departments who have a lot more money in, especially with the developments and such and the developers, you know, we have to deal with a lot of legal teams and things, which is expected, okay? And so we want to be able to show you in every reason why we're deciding what we're doing and be transparent with that. Okay, so that's why we're doing what you think you should score at, and then we'll say what you say what you want, and we say what we see, and then if there is an inconsistency with that, we can tell you why. Okay. I feel like, Jody, do you have any clarifying? I mean, I just want to make sure. I hope I'm making sense.
You absolutely are making sense.
Okay,
absolutely.
Good. I just needed some feedback to make sure, because I can't see any faces on purpose.
Yeah.
So that's fine. Okay, good. Okay, we're at 123. So let's get going. I walked through that. Again, the writing stories that we talked about before. So just making sure you use the right data. So when you're proving your point as to why, okay, again, you need to say why we definitely need this shelter in our area, and here's how we're going to do it. Okay. We want to see that. We want to see your passion. We want to see the data. We want to see the people that you're helping. We want to understand your story. So this is a great opportunity for you to show us all the good work that you're doing and how we can help you continue it. Okay. Make it personal and real, and over question the data. Make sure it's really thorough and you're on point with the data. Okay. So again, with the operations, okay, so I'll bring up the operations budget scoring sheet. And what I actually probably will do is let me walk through, since we have good half hour left. I want to leave enough time for questions. So I'm going to go back through these takeaways that we had before. I'm going to go through the packaging piece, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. If we don't have questions, I'm going to go back through these scoring sheets. Okay. So for operations budget, those takeaways to be sure to plan. And does this development fit within your organization's structure financially? Because remember, you've got to be able to pay for the non-congregate shelters operations once it's built. Okay, so we need you to show us how that's going to happen. Okay. Make sure everything matches as far as your audits, your monthly financials, and budgets. So again, like with the scoring sheet, when you're going through the scoring sheet and saying, oh, we need to add this because we do this or we don't do that, make sure that everything aligns. Okay, so which is part of the reason why we're doing this in groups. Okay, so then that way you're not frantically trying to align everything at the last minute. Okay, you still have some time. You have 5 more days. So just make sure that every part aligns. So looking at, for example, the audits, your monthly financials, and your budget, can you see how they all tie together? Okay, when you're looking at the scoring sheet, can you see with all of these different things that we're going to be checking, does it tie to everything else that you have in your application? Okay, so everything, it should be as seamless as possible. Your story should be very apparent. Okay. So we'll talk about uploading things to the file, and then explain your acronyms, because don't assume that we're going to know everything that you're talking about, because we may have some people from the Housing Finance Department or Office of Portfolio Management read these areas, and they may not know what you're talking about, because they may not be involved with, for example, the COC and ESG. They would not know those terms. Okay. And so keep asking questions. Let's go over the overviews and takeaways for the development budget, or the development overview. Be as clear as possible with all of your information. Again, if you have any of those environmental questions, you have like a day-ish to ask those. So we would need to know if you have any additional environmental questions. Okay, you can still ask them. Send them to homearp@dca.ga.gov. Okay. And looking at all of the federal compliance list, again, that's really important. Check back to that training. Sam Carvalho was on that, and she was excellent with breaking down all of the federal compliance pieces. So we're going to need all the information listed in the federal compliance section eventually. Some of the things you may not have, you just need to let us know. Again, and in the workbooks, you're able to shift and change and update and add, I should say add. Okay. You're able to add to those different sections. So if there's something that that doesn't adequately respond to what you need to say, you can just add your response to that. Okay. That is fine. Again, it's malleable. We did that on purpose. So just add to it. Don't change or delete anything. Just add. Okay. So then that way we know what you're adding to our list of stuff that we're looking at. okay? We know that it's different. Go through procurement if you need to. So you can go ahead and show that. Okay, we'll hit that in a second. We'll hit that question in a second. So wait on contracting until your application is approved. So that's the other thing, is wait on those big contracts that are going to be using HOME-ARP funds to go through that procurement process. So then that way there's no money wasted. We know for sure how things are going to move forward. So we have a question. I've been struggling with the budget. City and county contractors are really not getting back to me, and not all information will be in there with exact numbers. Also, we are still trying to decide on a property and have not had an environmental study or ready for one. So time is so close. We are looking at withdrawing. Okay. So that brings us to the budget section. Okay. So like we talked about in the budget section, so there were several different issues here. So thanks for your question, Rachel, because there may be other groups too that are experiencing this. So as far as people not getting back, giving your best possible estimates. So when you're looking at a budget, and this is basic. So I'm saying this to everyone with the full knowledge that you probably know where I'm going with this, okay? When you're looking so far ahead, the exactness of your budget is really vague. Like, you try and get as close as possible, but you have to leave yourself some wiggle room because you're not quite sure. It's good to have as much, I guess the best way to put it, to have those, not invoices, but those, not receipts. What's the word I'm looking for? You know what word I'm looking for. Estimates, that's the word I'm looking for. Quotes, thank you, Evan. Yes, quotes and estimates. You can go ahead and submit those. And I even took my special brain pills today. And so you have the quotes and you have the estimates. That gets pretty close to what you know you're going to spend. If they're not getting back to you, again, that's a communication piece. So with them and not with you, okay? So try and get as close as possible. If you feel like everything is too far off to be able to apply, we understand that. We don't know how many people are going to apply this particular application process. We have an idea, but we also don't know how many groups are going to need some capacity building assistance with those pieces. We also don't know, as far as shifting the budgets and things, what we're going to be able to do with that either. There's so many, because this is a demonstration project. There are a lot of, we don't even know how it's all going to pan out. We're trying to do the best that we can in creating a structure, but there are some things we don't know. So going back to your piece, so as far as deciding on a property, we can at least do the NEPA reviews on the 1 or 2 properties you're looking at. If you're looking at more than 2 properties, we should probably have a conversation about that. So we can help out with the NEPA review. And then we talked about the estimate, so getting as close as possible, which is why it's important to put those contingencies into your budget, because that gives you the buffer for when you're not as exact in those quotes and estimates. So so that's the other piece. So I hope that helps answer your questions, Rachel, because we understand, I mean, there is a bigger picture. So if you want to, again, the reason that we structured this the way we did is not only for you to hand it in to us, but to give you all, especially those of you who are not familiar with applying for these types of grants, kind of a general grant infrastructure for future grants that you're applying to. Okay, so you have all, a warehouse already of all the agencies you're working with and what you're doing with them, your general operations budget, which is always good to have on hand if you need to submit it. How many people you have working for you who are doing all of these different areas. So this is also a structure that you can save to your documents and just update. You know, you can shift it up, you can update it to your needs. So then that way, when you do have an opportunity for an additional grant that may or may not be with DCA, you can actually take that information, extract it, and then apply it. Okay, so again, we wanted to create a space for you to not only use this for this application, but for other applications. So that's the other piece involved with that. We only have about 20 minutes left. So Evan's question real quick, so then that way we can review that. Regarding the development budget, could you answer when you get the, okay, there's a line for the new construction and there are line items for construction materials, supplies, and labor. I'm confused where to put budgeted expenses here, all in new construction, or should we break down new construction across these line items? Hold on. Let me pull it over because I know what you're talking about here. Development budget. Okay. So we have okay. So I'm guessing construction materials, supplies, and labor. Materials, supplies, and labor. So Evan, what I am thinking that you need to do for this is that if they're, okay. All in new construction, or should we break down new construction across? You should break down. Okay, gotcha. The new construction piece, I think that's something that was probably one off on us. So what this probably should have been, okay? So I can see where your confusion is, and that was a mistake on my part, really, okay? So this is what it is new construction is the subheading, okay? So these are all new construction pieces. So don't worry about the new construction line. Don't worry about this line 19. Just fit it into materials, supplies, and labor. Okay. And if you are charging your materials, supplies, and labor to HOME-ARP, you can go ahead and state it here. If you are applying it to one of the other places, that's great. Just put it in these sections, okay, toward the funding source that you're put up here. So this could be funding 1. And you have 10,000 in labor for funding 2, materials, 10,000 for supplies, and then 50,000 for labor. And we'll do funding 2 and then fund 3. Okay, so that's how I would, and all of these, as you can see, add up here for other funding sources. Okay, if you're charging them all toward HOME-ARP, then you would just put that here. And then, okay, so essentially new construction. And for those of you who are on, you can essentially, for this little area here, unless you have like other things that don't fit into these 3, you can just gray that out. Okay. Does that all make sense? We have someone typing in. Okay. So that is the first section that came through. Is there any, or first question, we have about 10 minutes left. Any other questions? I will go back through the scoring sheets. Let me give it 10 seconds. Okay. So what I'll do is we'll go ahead and hit this scoring sheet real quick. Okay. So again, make sure you submit all of your information. The applicant is able, so make sure that this is really important, guys. We need to be able to you to show us that you can complete this in 3 years. We need to be able to utilize this information to show that because we have to have this all built by 2030. That's a really big important thing. Plus, we need you to be able to do it as quickly as possible as far as the building goes. So you have a year to start construction and it needs to be complete within 3 years. Okay. So that's something that we are definitely going to be monitoring and overseeing. So just make sure that when you're looking at the development budget, when you're looking at what you're doing, that's something you can get started. So Rachel, in response to your previous question, that's something really to consider is, do you think that you guys would be able to complete this within 3 years? Okay, so our plan is to know who's getting the funding by the end of this year. So November 15th is the date that we've set as a goal for ourselves. And then we're going to start the contracting in January in order to give us the full year to be able to finalize and go through procurement and do all those pieces, you know, so construction can start by the end of 2024. Okay, so for those of you who are applying, if we're going to contract with you and close, we need to make sure that this can all get started in 2024. So you guys have to be thinking in that direction, okay? So do you have the capacity to take on this additional program? We're going to look at that. So again, when you're completing the sections for your, when you're completing the sections for the the scoring sheet, go through those questions, think about them honestly, look back over all of your information. This may also give you an indication of maybe something you forgot to include. So that's when you go back and you say, hey, we need to actually add this. Maybe there's a particular data point, or maybe there's a story, or maybe there's something in the budget and a contract that you have with a particular agency to do a particular operations thing for you. It could be, can construction start before 2024? No. So if you're starting construction, HUD needs to approve everything. Okay, so we need to go through all the HUD provisions before anyone breaks ground. So if there is a timing issue with that, if we need to sign something sooner, and if you guys are approved and we need to sign something sooner, that could be negotiated, that's fine. But there are a lot of steps involved. So if you are submitting an application to us for construction that's already started, there are a lot of HUD provisions that may keep you, there may be some issues with that. So you may need to follow up with us if you have already started construction, okay? What is the email address for an environmental review? I'm going to go back to your other one, Teresa. So the email address is the HOME-ARP address. So HOME-ARP at dca.ga.gov. So HOMEARP at dca.ga.gov. And I know Jody's putting it in the chat right now. Okay, Teresa, you have a question as far as the home builders and architects advise that they are unable to provide specific relating to individual line items without having complete plans that would require some initial contracts. How should the questions for the new individual construction be handled? Okay, good. Great. I'm so glad, Sheldon. Thank you. So how should questions for the new individual construction be handled? That's a great question. So again, looking at the budgets and your development overview, Okay. So part of those complete plans are going to be happening once an application is approved. Okay. So I think the best thing to do would probably be in your documentation to show possibly emails, other oversight that you've had with those initial contracts. I mean, those initial plans, I guess, is, I mean, essentially what you've been talking to your builders and architects about at this, to this point. Okay, so if you have emails, I know you guys have a very active board, Teresa, so any board minutes and reports that you've had on the development, any particular documentation to show kind of the history of what you've done so far would be great. And this is for everyone. So if you, again, show us if you have a gap that doesn't fit into this box, then give us backup data to show us where you're at. Okay. So again, trying to give us the best idea in your budgets about what's going on, and the best estimates that you can give us based on the information you have. Okay. And what you've received from the builders, the developers, the people who are supplying wood, the people, you know, all of that, subcontractors, if you're working with them yet. Some of you may not be. So, but give us the best information that you possibly can. And because there may not be some answers to the question. HOME-ARP may be a big part of your development along with some other pieces. And yeah, I understand how builders and architects aren't going to be totally on board yet because you don't have a ton of things completed yet and money behind you yet. So giving us the most information that you have would be just, that's how I would move forward with this is, okay, we understand you need X, Y, and Z. This is what we have and why. Okay. Jody, is there a better way for me to put that? Or I feel like.
No, that sounds good. I mean, just like you said, we're looking at estimates until we get actual, you know, invoices and all that good stuff. So
Right.
I think you put it right.
Okay. Are there any specific numbers that HOME-ARP is going to hold an agency to? Okay, so here's what we're going to hold you to. Okay, if we sign an agreement with you, okay, for instance, if we say we are planning to build 10 units but can only get 8 after contractors start. Okay, that's a great question, Doug. I think what comes into that is that's a really good question. As far as the numbers that we're going to hold you to, I think the biggest thing is really trying to maintain that under $250,000 per unit built. Okay. So if you're edging toward more than $250,000 per unit of HOME-ARP funds, that's going to be probably a bigger piece because I don't believe that we can go over that. Oh, we have to get off. So that's probably, so what we're going to do is, let me revisit this. Okay, so we really need to start building in 2024. I'm going to put that out there. It needs to be finished within 3 years. Going to put that out there. If there are issues that come up that essentially shift the build, so if you're rehabbing a property or if you're building a new property and yes, you found that you can only do 8 or 9 versus 10. I think we're going to look at the overall cost and again, look at the 250 or less And I think that that's going to be probably the number we're going to hit. And I think with this particular funding, we're a little bit more flexible because it's a demonstration project with regards to anything kind of outside of that. I think the main rule is 250 or less. So if you think that there's a possibility that you may have to change the amount of units that you have, then I would make sure that when you're estimating how much it's going to cost per unit to build a rehab, that you lowball it a little bit more. So figure 150,000 or 200,000 build cost per unit. So then that way, if something shifts and you think it's going to go higher, then we fall under the 250 requirement. Okay. So I think that's okay. Great. So glad. Okay, guys, we need to go. And I know that there are a ton of questions coming through. We're going to go ahead and grab these questions out of the chat as well. We're going to post them to our site because they have all been wonderful questions. And so, so we're going to keep them and we're going to forward them onto the site. So check there. Sheldon, I know you're typing to us right now, which is awesome, but we're going to actually have to stop this fun time together early today, just because, like I said, we have a presentation that we're giving at 2 o'clock. So what constitutes a unit? Okay, so $250,000 per unit. So that is the place where someone lives. Well, let's put it this way. The entire, if we're giving you $1 million with everything that you're doing for the development, you have to spend, you can only build up to 4 units. If you build 5, that's awesome. If you build 6, that's awesome, but you can't build 3. So if you use that $1 million toward part for the unit and part for plumbing, that's fine. Even if it's in infrastructural pieces, that's great. Thank you. So we're gonna get going, but really it's over everything that you're using for the development divided by the number of units you have. Post the folder zip and send instructions for the grant packet. Yes, all of that should be uploaded to the website by tomorrow morning. I'm going to work on it tonight. Okay, so all of this information should be uploaded just in a matter of a few hours, hopefully. So if all works out. Okay, so guys, we're going to let you go. Thank you so much. Again, just go to forms, go to the forms on our website if you have any more questions, and we will get you all situated if you have any more questions, okay? We're going to be sending a ton of constant contacts over the next 5 days just to make sure you're all on point. If you have any additional questions, we just want to keep that contact up, okay? Good luck, guys. We are so excited to see everything that you're submitting to us. We're so excited. We'll talk to you guys soon, okay? Thanks so much. Bye.